And I'm also going to...
And this is as fun as possible, right?
Yeah,
Okay,
like
cool.
you don't need
Giggles
to be...
and fun. Yeah, good, cool.
So yeah, hello everyone, hope you're doing well. As you can see, we're doing the multi-camera shot thing today. Welcome back to another episode of the Hustle Chronicles, where we're having an honest discussion about entrepreneurship, being an entrepreneur, the highs, the lows, what we enjoy about it, what we don't like about it at all, and of course, some of our favorite stories, whether they be embarrassing or not. We've always bring on amazing guest speakers, and we've got another amazing guest speaker on the podcast today. I'm gonna, as I always say, I don't like doing the introductions because these people do amazing work and they should be able to tell us what they do. So instead, I'm going to hand over to our guest speaker for today. Chi, could we know a bit more about you and what you do?
Amazing. Thank you so much for having me, Jeffrey. I absolutely love the title, by the way. Hustle Chronicles is like, yeah, that should be like the name of my book when I decide to do one. My name is Chibugo Okafor. I'm the founder and CEO of Kendake Honey. We are a award-winning, socially conscious business that empowers rural female farmers out in Africa. So one of the great things that comes from that is honey and some other honey-infused products. So...
Perfect.
Yeah.
I like it. Short and sweet, just
Yes.
like honey. I think it's really cool. We'll go into where the business came from and all of that. But I think one key thing to mention is obviously you are a TEDx speaker.
Yes, I am. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah. Could we know a bit? Because we'll include a link in the description. But it'll be great for our audience to know essentially what the speech was about, but also what led to you wanting to do that.
Yeah, so actually I was having this conversation with my girlfriends actually over dinner just the other day. And I suppose they hadn't heard the story of how it all came about. And I think it's really important that I share this because I always talk about the entrepreneurial journey being one of a sort of a faith journey, if you like. If you kind of just take one step forward, as scary as that usually can be, then it'll just kind of all figures itself out. So I'll tell you about how this came about. I did actually go around when I was much younger telling people that I would do a TED Talk at some point. And I would be in my room, instead of cleaning it up, I'd be practicing this TED Talk about absolutely nothing. It would probably be like what I did over the weekend. And then, fast forward a couple of years, I've now got a business. And so... it was one of the early stages. It was so early on. I think it was like 3 months into the business. I must have been in a cafe one of the cafes that we were supplying. And it was just a really nice cafe. So when I would go over to drop the product, I'd also stay there and do work. And there was a gentleman that's kind of sitting across the table to me. And I think we just started speaking. And I must have bored him to death about the business. And he listened, shockingly, and was really, really invested. And he was in finance. And I think we joked and said, in 2 years' time, I'd probably be hiring him. And that was it. We never spoke again. But I kind of let him know what I was doing. Fast forward about 2 to 3 years now. Or 1.5, 2 to 3 years, or I'm not sure. It's all a blur. And I'm at this massive exhibition. We're not one of the exhibitors, but there's like lots of different products. So I'm just looking around and I'm walking, and then I hear someone shout, "Oh, that's her. That's the girl that I was telling you about." So obviously I turned around because it was really loud, and I see this guy that I haven't seen for 2 years, and he's like rushing over to me, and he kind of drags me by my arm and is like, "This is the TEDx convener of this certain place," and he's speaking about agriculture, and I was telling him how you would be the most phenomenal speaker for this. And that's literally how it happened. And obviously, like in between, I was obviously working on the business and there was lots that was going on in between, but it just is evidence that this whole thing is just, you can't plan it. And I think the universe or whatever it is that when you put in, you get back out. And I just think that was one of those moments of like a reward for sort of the hard work that I was doing. And also, I guess I quote unquote manifested it, which is like the new TikTok slang there.
No, but thank you for that. Because I can say I've watched it myself. And it is a very powerful speech. We will definitely include the link to that so you guys can watch it.
Amazing.
We can watch it afterwards. Let's start with the business itself. Where did the idea come from? Actually, before we even go into where the idea came from, Was even going to like starting your own business, was that something that you always wanted to do, or was that more of like the idea, like it came later on in life?
Yeah, no, most definitely not. I didn't even really, my parents are both doctors, so they're very sort of in the box sort of thinkers, and they definitely wanted the same life for me. But obviously, it didn't really make sense when I would be quite squeamish at the sight of blood. So that kind of dream died. I never really grew up seeing anyone close to me do business and do it successfully. So it just never was something that occurred to me. And actually, this story, I never really can give myself the credit. And if I'm being truthful, I don't deserve the credit because it really just happened by accident, honestly. It's like a series of really fortunate mistakes. So I don't know. I know there's like people who talk about like, I don't know, research the area, read like all the Financial Times and be on top of things and blah, blah, blah. I definitely just wasn't that person. So, it's just a series of fortunate mistakes. I actually studied pharmacy for my undergraduate at King's College London. Didn't really feel like it fit. It was this kind of a difficult 4 years. And I knew that I had always wanted to do some level of work within the NGO sector. And a friend of mine told me that her parents owned an NGO out in Nigeria. Okay. And so I was supposed to do about 6 weeks, 6 weeks internship out there. But unfortunately, I just wasn't introduced to that side of Nigeria where women had to, go through there were so many barriers and so many difficulties and challenges that they'd face in society. And at that level, I mean, I think it's a global issue. I recognize that now as I'm much older, but it's much more serious out there. And so 20-something-year-old, really naive, I was like, okay, obviously I can't go back home to the UK. I'm going to just solve this. I'll give it 5 years. That was challenging. It was a series of high-level stakeholder meetings where you'd meet with like heads of government and go back and forth, and there'd be really phenomenal meetings. But yeah, this is slipping off.
Oh, no.
Sorry, it's actually just slipping off. I should have just tightened it. There was a series of high-level stakeholder meetings, and you'd have these amazing conversations, and then when you leave the room, you just kind of wouldn't hear from anybody. So I guess I got really frustrated with the industry, and the plan was to come back to the UK. But before then, I was like, let me just travel around Africa since I'm out here. And then one day I stumbled across this woman that was harvesting honey. And I know that it sounds really ignorant, but I just, the idea of African honey, let alone Nigerian honey, just wasn't really not so sexy, So I was just like, I just didn't know that there was honey in Africa, let alone Nigeria. So I was like, can I try some of this stuff? And gorgeous, absolutely stunning. Like it was so good. And I was like, okay, I need like a 20-litre keg. And that's what I've got on me. We figured it out. And she harvested this honey, paid her, and got back to town with my friends. And everyone was like, oh my gosh, we've been looking for natural organic honey, kind of like left me. And then I had about literally a bottle left. And so I called this woman being like, oh, thank you so much for the honey. Unfortunately, all my friends have taken it. Can I get some more? And she was like, you took everything that was for me and my family. Oh, no. So, I kind of at that moment, I think the light bulb just kind of switches on. You know how like in cartoons, it's like an aha moment. I was like, oh, whoa, this is a good business opportunity. And I suppose, one thing led to another, and here we are.
Yeah. Oh, that's really good. And I think it's very key, as you mentioned, that sometimes, the business idea will just come because you either yourself or others will experience that like, what's the word? A problem. There we go. Like you'll experience that problem or that thing that, you're just like, why isn't there a solution for it? And then if there is, it'll be like, why isn't there like a easier way to do this? And if there isn't, you're just like, well, this is so simple. Why can't we just like figure out a way to solve this or to work around this?
Yeah.
But I think one key thing that you mentioned, which I'm sure I know I can relate to, I'm sure any entrepreneurs listening can relate to, is this idea of, you get into these big rooms, you get into these like big competitions, your name, your brand is out there, and then you're just like, wow, like I'm in this space, I'm doing really well. and then you just get to a point where, like you said, you don't hit back, or people are just like, wow, your business idea sounds so cool. And you're just like, great. Like, I can see you're an investor. Like, would you be interested in investing? And they're just like, oh, well, while the idea is great, unfortunately, we don't have the spaces, or your business doesn't fit the model that we're looking to do.
Yeah.
So for entrepreneurs, I guess, who are going through that, what would you be your like advice to them, or what would you say to encourage them to keep on going with their business?
Yeah, no, that's such an amazing question, because it's the reality, isn't it, really? I think I always like to have these discussions and be as real as possible, because if you get onto any social media platform, there's always some angry old man that's shouting down, being like, get out of bed, you suck. If you put in the work, it'll just like all manifest and all this stuff. And really, you do all of that, and sometimes it just really doesn't work. And down the line, like I said, in the beginning, it really is just a faith journey, really just believing in your idea, because, you can put together this phenomenal, very intimate, intricate business plan, and with all your financial projections and everything look really cool. And then something like COVID comes around, you're like, did not plan for that, and it's like back to the drawing board. It really is really challenging, but it's about, do you believe in your business idea and remaining true to that? I think as well, remembering your why. I do find myself, especially at the lowest moments, where I'm just like, you know what, this was a mistake at the start. I didn't plan for this. So it's okay, Chi, if it doesn't happen, give it up, right? This is how I talk to myself at the lowest points. But then I sometimes sit back and I'm like, no, but what's the why? Like, why am I doing this? Like, and that consistent reminder of your why. And I think, when you do remember your why, that reflects in your unique sort of selling point as a business. And then there's that person that can resonate with that why so strongly. And that's how it sort of like folds into this opportunities of like being put on platforms or investment or whatever it is that you're looking for. But the core thing there is that why. And I do think maybe quite a few people either A, don't know their why at the beginning, and or B, forget it down the line, or C, even compromise that just for quick opportunities. And I get why. It's not easy stuff, but I
definitely agree. And I think it's key to mention, like, as you said, that there is that tendency for people to be like, they see like there's a, big networking event with like loads of big names. And like you said, sometimes whether it's like, my why was about like solving this issue, but I'm like,
I need the money. Honestly, I get it totally.
But I think, like you said, it's like looking back at your why, because
for sure.
Someone we had on one of our other podcasts, she was we had a very in-depth conversation about the podcast and just entrepreneurship as a whole. And one of the key things she mentioned was this idea of people get so focused on like, I need to get the awards, I need to get the funding, I need to like do this, and then like I can focus on the business, I can make it better and all of this stuff. But it's actually, like you said, like people, and I think she mentioned it, I've heard other people say it, people invest in your business because of like why you do what you do, not necessarily because of what you're doing.
And that's what makes it different. Exactly. I think that's the main thing, is like it stands out in that way. Like your why, it's your unique selling point, isn't it, really? And someone somewhere will connect to that, both from the perspective of your target audience, but also the behind the scenes with investors as well.
100%. Because even like with, I think the distributor we use for the podcast, like Buzzsprout, they did a thing of like, people who like struggle with like, the idea of starting one, they're just like, oh, like what if I'm judged on this or that, or like all of this. And they were saying like, you got to be realistic and see that like, they said most people don't get past their second podcast episode. Like they'll just do it. They'll get so focused on the numbers, on like bringing an audience in, and they're just like, we did 2 episodes, it didn't work, shut it down.
Oh no.
But something like I think like you said, it's about that why, because even like with Pick Up the Mic, like we look back on our, like when we started, and like I say this story all the time when we talk about the podcast, that first episode, we were starting in 2021, recording online, still in this old like tiered system. So we were using Zoom, had our cameras off to boost the internet connection. And on that episode, you can go back and watch it. There's like a 4-minute gap after, like, into the episode where there's just silence, and that's on me because when I was editing it, I didn't see that I left the gap where I cut stuff. But I say, like, now I leave it there because I'm like, we've like improved, we've changed, we've grown.
That's evident. Look at this fancy microphone.
I know, it's just literally like if you told me 2 years ago, this is where we would be, I'd be like, maybe, but like I'd have to do like so much. But I think, like you said, it's like because we're so focused on our why and why we're doing it. That's what really actually led to like, I guess people saying, oh, actually, this is a really good investment. Like, let me talk to you. Let's see how we can work together. So yeah, I think that's definitely like a key thing to say. Thank you so much. Thank you.
It's amazing.
So our next question, I think I'd like to ask is, what has been your favorite thing? Like, it could be a moment, it could be a story, but what's been the most favorite thing you've found from being an entrepreneur yourself?
Oh my gosh, favorite. Honestly, there's been so many. It's not, so I don't know if it's like a moment, but I think my happiest moment was going from ideation to actually like holding our final jar in our hand. Like, and I think when I was looking at that and I was looking at all that it represents, because remember, you know, we're a social enterprise. So our story's so much deeper than just the honey. The honey is phenomenal. I didn't bring any today. That's so
it's okay.
bad.
It's okay.
That's so bad.
It's okay.
I wish I did, because then you could taste it and be like, yeah, I could co-sign that. Damn it.
That's okay.
I'll get some over to you. It's phenomenal stuff, honestly. And obviously I don't have the credit doesn't go to me, it goes to the bees, the African bees. So they're doing a great job. The honey is gorgeous, but also the deeper thing there is, you know, people's lives are better because of this business. And when I look at that jar and I think, oh my gosh, this just happened from me talking about it. So then it being a physical thing is pretty cool. I think that's like a continued thing I can go back to, that I'm like, oh wow, yeah, this is real.
And I think it must also be cool because like as the business grows and you're like trying new things, like you said, to always see that like going from idea to the actual final product must be
so fun. And obviously, and people don't know how much goes on behind the scenes. It's something we've just completed a rebrand, and it's taken a year. It took us a year. I was saying to our designer, I was like, it's our 1-year anniversary next week. She was like, oh my gosh, what? Yeah. So we've done this very detailed rebrand to really bring about like sort of our message, all the colors and the vibrancy. So excited for you to see the final product. And yeah, like it's taken so much, but it's so lovely to just kind of hold it into your hands and then see like, And I think also starting to supply the UK was another really big, the UK market. I was like, oh, wow. Like, whoa. We're really big now.
No, that's really good.
Thanks.
That's very, like, I think, like you said, like even as a business to be able to expand into new markets. It's so impactful.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. I guess I'd like to also ask, because obviously I think both from the brand perspective, and you mentioned it in your speech about, you know, this whole idea of how, I guess, women are seen in the world. We don't need, we could do a whole episode on that.
And we should.
I promise.
Okay, good.
It's coming. It's coming.
Good. I want to be on that. Make it a panel.
I can make it a panel.
Yeah.
You know, actually, like, I don't shout out enough. My sis, I've probably, like, she's going to be happy now that I said it, but my sister started an organization or an app called the Mummy and Me app, and it's all about supporting birthing mothers because of a report that Birthrights did, that black women are 4 times more likely.
Wait, no, I've seen that.
Yeah,
and I added her on LinkedIn because I'm going to speak to her. I was like, your sister. Yeah. Amazing. What's her first name?
Josephine.
Yeah, I think I've seen that. Yeah. Oh my gosh, amazing.
Yeah. So she started a podcast called Birth Beyond Borders, which is all about like bringing essentially birthing like mothers or like people who are along that journey, and having them to come and discuss like their journeys, how they've sort of faced issues, and just to have a social space. But
I'm going to speak to her, Josephine. Expect a message from me soon. Yeah, that's phenomenal, because that's other work. I think my first love actually is because of my experiences on the ground in Nigeria. I share in my TED talk of a moment where I went into an office, just suited and booted. I was like, okay, here we go. We're going to go look for investment to start to export. And the gentleman across the table who was sort of in charge of it, looked at me and he stood up and went to lock the door. And I was like, oh gosh, here we go. And he was like, I really like your like tenacity and your drive. Like, I just really want to give you some advice. And he was actually being really genuine. Okay. And he said, okay, so what you need to do is go get married.
I'm still, sorry, my laptop just needs charging, but I'm still listening. Okay. Keep going.
Go get married, fill out a bit more. And then, people will be like, think that you're like ready for business and it'll be like really serious. I remember sitting across the table like, sorry, what? I just presented. Did you listen to anything I said? What does my marital status have to do with anything I'm doing here, right? And I think in that moment, for me, the issue was not really myself, because I could stand up for myself. And, I knew that when I knew leaving that room, I was like, oh, whatever, I'm going to make this happen regardless. But then I just thought about all the other women that had to
go through that.
Sit across that table and listen to that. And do they have the resources or the skill set or the capacity to be able to stand up for themselves, but also continue to sort of move forward, because it's really discouraging. In addition to all the very many complexities of running business, particularly within the African climate. And so I have an NGO, it's called The Walk with Women and Children, and it's my first love. I love my business, I do, but my first love is, sort of dedicating myself to empowering young girls and women. So we kind of emulate I don't know if you remember PSHE when we were much younger, but it isn't something that happens in Africa at all. You just kind of figure it out. I went to school in Nigeria for 2 years. Puberty happened and I had no idea what was going on. I went from I don't know how short I was, but I grew literally overnight, and I was like, whoa, what's going on here? And there was literally no one there to be like, yeah, it's called a growth spurt. This is, and I had to figure out being taller than all the boys and being made fun of because of that. So yeah, we kind of emulate the PSHE that's here with an additional E, economics, because obviously I'm a business owner and I know how important financial literacy is, and we sort of, empower them to learn those skill sets, essentially.
Oh, that's really good. You kind of answered. I didn't even ask it, but you kind of answered it already. Because I was going to say, as a female entrepreneur, and I think specifically as a Black female entrepreneur.
Oh yeah.
You probably had a lot of experiences. Yeah. I guess for other we can do it in as a two-pronged thing, but I think the answers some of them will be similar. But as both a female, but also as a Black entrepreneur, how have you navigated that space? Because I know friends, I know, like I said, I've got family who have their own businesses. And there is that tendency of people to be like, oh yeah, a friend of mine, he was just saying you see all the time, oh yeah, we're, as a organization, we're investing in Black owned businesses or BAME businesses. And it's just cool. I'm putting myself out there, I'm doing all of this stuff. But then you turn around and it's just we don't really see what you're the idea you've got. It'd be nice as a project or a fun thing on the side, but as a business, it's not the best thing. Just keep that, just keep it as a side project. So, for both female but also Black entrepreneurs, and maybe even sort of combining the area, because as I said, it's a double
barrier.
How have you found best to navigate that space and to ensure, like you said, you feel empowered when you're walking into these rooms?
Well, I'm going to start off with the positive. Here's what and this is the evidence for the reason to ensuring that women continue to strive for leadership positions, but also that society is, doing their part to ensure that women feel or have the right resources and accessibility to these positions. As I've gone along the journey, whether intentionally or unintentionally, I've had phenomenal support from women in the right positions. I.e., my designer, for example, is a woman. The ladies that helped us with the go-to-market strategy, they own their own company. They're women. Some of the buyers that we speak to, women. And it's such a different time. I always, say, what a time to be alive, because it's such a different time. And the evidence for a business, a socially conscious and also a financially profitable business, usually would have those doors or gates closed to them because of the barrier of firstly being a female and also the additional barrier being black. I don't know which one comes first, actually. Let me not say that. But, that difficulty. Yeah. And so the evidence, our business is, and it's something that we're also doing is we're highlighting on our website a lot of the phenomenal women that we've worked with, just as evidence to show to other people that as women are getting increase access to these opportunities, it opens up the playing field, because the idea about the increase in diversity is, yes, definitely the increase in diversity in terms of the physical representation, so being your gender, your race, whatever else, right? But the real idea behind that is the diversity in perspectives that one will bring because of these intersectionalities, right? So there is an angle or a way, and this is a huge generalization, but one always tends to say that women have a higher attention to detail, for example. If you marry that with, someone who's, and this is again generalization of a male who is able to look at things in black and white and doesn't really pay attention to the gray areas. If you marry those skill sets, you will always be able to provide a full, well-rounded solution to whatever problem. So it's the diversity in perspectives. And that also is, there's an additional element there. So yeah, for me, it's my journey has shown, or I always say my journey is evidence to that, because of the recognition of this business that probably maybe those grey areas would have been overlooked and people may not have understood the reason or the necessity of bringing forward a food, product that is, has this social idea behind it and is doing this work. But there is a great market that is interested in, the products that they're putting on their shelves now, like Gen Z, I can't remember the statistics, but it's somewhere between 60 to 70% that are really intentional about their buying and only want products that have some level of social or environmental impact, which I think, maybe some groups of individuals may have, ignored at some point. So it's I think I just want to kind of stress that point in terms of the positive. The negative, there is so much work to be done. Because I'm a scientist, and by nature of being a scientist, the thing that we do is, and if you can remember back to your biology and chemistry classes, particularly chemistry, you would always do test 3 times. You'd have your hypothesis and then you do your test 3 times and then you get your conclusion. So it was always factual and it came with the core numbers and you just never argued with that. So I love to see data. I guess data can be swayed to an opinion, but the numbers are the numbers, right? And the numbers for women who have access to investment and also women who then are black women who have access to investment in the UK is appalling. Honestly. And I think, having been able to connect with several, and I mean several, phenomenal women doing great stuff within the UK, I cannot understand why they don't have that access to investment. There is a problem, and it's clearly not being translated. And I think obviously the glaring issue is the reduced or lower amount of women in these leadership positions that can then go on to say, oh, actually, I get what you're saying. Can I look at your numbers? Can I go a bit deeper? As opposed to just kind of from the, get-go being like, no, at some point down the line, you're going to have babies. You're going to want to focus on, this really archaic, like old school stuff, which is, it is still, a problem today. So I think, 100%. There is so much work to be. I think the numbers are like 1% to 2%. It's really bad. Oh, wow. Yeah, it's really bad. Lots of work to be done. Actually, I do have a question. I would think you should just because we were talking about the experience as sort of a black female entrepreneur. And I suppose somehow you can give some light to that. I think maybe just adding on to that, what your thoughts are, especially since you have a sibling that's also working in space.
Yeah. So I'd say, well, as a black person being an entrepreneur, like you said, like the statistics are tough. So I know through my work, we support black-owned businesses, and there's a lot of discussions on, like you said, like the data shows that like you're essentially not going to get that many support, that much support out there. Even like, for example, obviously like I do this. So I know from like you're applying for stuff, you're putting yourself out there, you're doing all these things and you're sort of just like, okay, but you know, there's clearly like interest because, you know, and I think especially, I will say this from my experience, but also I know from like friends who are either like female entrepreneurs or like black and female entrepreneurs. There's definitely that like extra barrier if you're a service-based business to a product-based business.
Okay.
I'm not saying like, oh, you know, like you know, if you're service-based, if you're a product-based business and you're black and female, like you got it better than one that's service-based. But I think like they were saying as well, like sometimes when you're a service-based, and I think especially what my sister, like from some of the stuff she's experienced, is sometimes people will be like, oh yeah, you've got this really good idea, but because there's no physical product, there's nothing that I'm like physically buying into. It's like, how can I connect with this? Whereas with like a product, you can see it, you can hold it, you can feel it. And it's like, cool, I can see where the money's going. But with a service-based business, it's very hard to just get people, like if the person gets what you're saying instantly, that's amazing. But I think one of the things that, so like I was doing a pitching competition earlier on this year. And one thing that someone who's a mentor that was saying was that he was just like, with your business, you always have to think about your audience. So I guess he was like, in the context of like the stuff my sister does, or to be honest, any entrepreneur, like if you're targeted, like you've got, so like someone actually, sorry, on the program runs a business called Cash Black. So essentially, it's kind of like Top Cashback, where there's a list of black-owned businesses that people basically buy from these businesses, and then they get money. They get basically cash back from spending money at these like African, I think it's like black like restaurants, black-owned restaurants, black-owned like clothing lines. They basically like incentivize them to get money. So he's sort of connecting both the audience but also the businesses together. And he was saying like the thing that he struggled with, and I guess sometimes not necessarily so much for me because like I'm not specific, like I said, we bring diverse people on, but I wouldn't necessarily say like there's one group that through the podcast I'm particularly trying to like push out there. But he was saying like his barrier is that like black people, he said especially, they get it. They're like, black businesses find it tough. As customers, we don't always feel like, you know, the brands we're buying from are representing us or get where we're coming from. So they're like in. He said the issue is, as we sort of mentioned here, is that there are not that many big whether they're angel investors, whether they're like investors in general or like organizations that are black owned that can invest money into his business. So he was saying there's always that tendency that like you'll go to a pitch and you might do it and everyone might be white, or everyone may not be of the same race as you, and you're just like, oh yeah, you know, like as a black owned business, like he's just like, sometimes you'll be pitching and you'll just be like, as a black owned business, sometimes you're struggling to get customers. And it's just that.
I find that really confusing because what is the actual issue here? If you walk into a room and you're pitching, naturally, I'm sure you can imagine that a lot of the conversations that I have regarding business are with, you know, the typically white people. And so I'm trying to figure out the issue here. It is the issue, because if I was an investor, I think the number one thing for me would be about the business and the money that the return on my investment. Your race is just there is the added element, of course, and I'm not going to ignore it. I'm going to see how it either amplifies and or takes away from whatever it is that you're doing. So if you were in this day and age, I don't know, going to start selling like, I'm trying to think of the most African thing ever, suya, and you were, you know, an Indian male or a Chinese male, I would query like, what's going on here? I just want to know, like, do you already have the network for your target audience, which would predominantly be made up of black people, right?
I'd say yeah, we could literally
gone somewhere else.
No. Like this could literally be its own episode, but I do think we can do more research on it and come back. But I would still love to hear from you. But we can make it an episode where we actually understand and break down the actual issue there. But no, that's all right. I think like an interesting discussion that like a group of like friends and I had actually, funnily enough, yesterday was especially with some of these programs. I think certain people, like I'll go from the program. We spoke about it from program perspective, but it also, I guess, applies if you're looking for investors, because I think sometimes I think it's two factors. Sometimes, and I'm not saying like racism or like getting judged on your race when you go for pitching doesn't happen, but I think sometimes there's that aspect of expectations from like whether it's investors or organizations. So this one person that I was like in the discussion was saying like what people sometimes think is they see like a name that's like big. They work with like, I don't know, like big people. They do like exhibits and stuff. So like you were saying, like, for example, like, obviously we're recording in the Roundhouse. You can see the logo behind me. Like some people might feel like, oh, you know, the Roundhouse, they've got all this stuff. They've got all this money. Like I can just go to them, tell them I've got this idea and do this. Now I don't know if this is the case with the Roundhouse. I'm just using it as an example. So please don't quote me. But I guess my point would be like, sometimes people might say like, oh, like if, you know, you apply to do something at the Roundhouse and you're then told like, oh no, you can't. Some people are just like, oh, but why? Like, I'm a member of the community. I'm doing all this good stuff. Is it because of like a racing? And people have to be like, no, it's not. It's just like letting people know the realism of like what you do. And I think sometimes like something someone said to me, which was really impactful from like someone who's like worked in the space of supporting programs. She said that a lot of people, they'll see like these programs where they're given like undivided attention, they're given support, people find ways to work with them. Then they go out into the working world. Maybe the program was only 3 months, maybe it was a year, whatever. They go out into the working world, or they go out into the world and they're expecting that same level of support or like people instantly willing to connect. When the harsh reality is like, unfortunately, sometimes people just either A, don't care, B, like I said, they just don't get what you're trying to like portray to them, or C, they're just like I said, like they think the product idea is like too simple or it's not like clear or they don't get it.
But that to me is now no longer a race issue. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah, I see what you mean.
Because I think that's now like the business is, or I mean, like it goes back to our point about trying to prove yourself and remembering your why. My issue would then be if you were saying, oh yeah, no, when you initially talked about expectations, but I thought you were saying expectations as in on the other end as an investor, they're thinking, you know, that's a different thing. Do you see what I'm saying? And for me, that's why this stuff is so important. And what I'm doing as well at Kendake is it's really essentially trying to be a living example of breaking down those barriers to show that actually, no, got my head screwed on, kid. I want it more than you do. And I'm ready to prove that. And I think that's, where, we have the responsibility to ensure that we are kicking down those doors. And these are words that I'm saying, right? Kicking down these doors, quite literally, like what? But you know what I mean? It's that consistent in the face of rejections and the no's. And I completely understand that if you were saying expectations on that, in that regard. I don't know if that was what you were trying to... I
think that's another part of it.
Yeah.
Like you said, like there is that tendency. I think for like investors, like, I don't know, it's a tough question because I think sometimes like as... Like, I think like you said, like sometimes it's just... I think it's about not level of exposure, but like if you grew up in certain, like I guess for I won't use the person's business because like they might not be happy with me using it, but like for example, if your business is, I guess like you said, like targeted towards specifically like I guess one group of people, or it's like, you know, there's one group that will instantly get it and the others won't. It's hard then for people who have either like never lived that experience or it's been so like long since they've been through that or lived through it for them to like instantly connect with that. So like what I said, like even with this, like the whole point I do the whole point I do the podcast is something else, but the whole reason why I do this, like the Entrepreneurial series, was because I said like there's like literally, as you said, there's loads of people on Instagram that are just like, oh, like if you're not doing this, then you suck. Like if you want to be a business, you need to do this.
Yeah.
And like it's even got to a point where I'm literally like fed up because you'll see all these people on Instagram and they're just like, oh yeah, if you want to blow off, you want the algorithm to work in your favor, like you have to do this. And I'm just like, look, like there's so many of you out there, and clearly like it must not be working for all of you because like
we don't know you.
Yeah. So I think like what I really like is the ones where they're more honest about like...
Yeah. And I think that's important, isn't it, really? Because it goes back to the old saying of information being key. And the more informed you are, I suppose, it would have been much more helpful if I was more prepared, but not too prepared, because then I would probably be really scared, but more prepared for the realities of doing business. And I think that's why I sort of then embarked on, I recognized that need. And so that's why I went on to do my MBA at Oxford, because I was like, I'm doing this thing, like I'm freestyling. If you told me like, put together a profit versus loss sheet and all of that stuff, or a balance sheet, I'd be like, huh? So I really kind of went out of my way to study that, so that I could then understand the technicalities, I suppose, of running a business and get in tune with the lingo. And, I had no idea what a VC was before I embarking on that journey.
I think you're right. I think there is that tendency for like, as entrepreneurs.
It's the knowledge. Sorry, we were saying about the knowledge. So important, getting that information. And that's why these conversations are important. And someone's not coming in here and giving you the airy fairy, like, sometimes I listen to people talk and I'm like, you cried this morning, I'm sure, like, or 2 days ago, because I also run a business and I want to cry all the time sometimes. But it's so rewarding. I have to just put that in there. It's the weirdest thing. It's like having a baby. My maternal instincts kicking in. It's like this really painful, weird, like dreadful at times journey, but that's so rewarding and fulfilling at the same time. So I always encourage people. However, having said that, I do think as well, this new sort of TikTok age and culture is very focused on like, forget about your 9 to 5, work all these hours focusing on yourself, get out of the matrix and the rat race or whatever. You can tell who's like watching the TikTok videos and not. That's me. And I always sit there and I'm like,
exactly.
It's a almost a type of character that can do this stuff. It is really, because like I said, it's a faith journey, and you just have to kind of muscle up this, like really just put it out of somewhere and be like, I'm just gonna do it. And this is an everyday thing. I'm not talking about like putting out your first Instagram post and being like, oh, hi guys, I've started my business. That's easy stuff. I mean, like getting onto these large scale platforms and people beginning to know about your business. And then, you've just had a supplier drop you the day before. Or send over, and that literally has happened to us, where they sent one of our largest suppliers at the time sent us a message being like, your packaging like broke at some point. This is very early days, and was like, we can't deal with that. It's honey, it's sticky, you're done. I was like, wait, what? Hold on, no, please. I go back again to expectations of like support, and then I realized these people on this other end, they're not. There are some not so nice people. They're not, but they're not being nasty. They're not looking at me. Maybe they are, I don't know, but I'm going to assume they're not looking at me as just a black female and like, oh my gosh, I'm ridiculous. Maybe that was there at some point, I don't know. I think they're just quite literally like, I've got my job and I'm doing it. Do yours. And so I learned the hard way, because I did, had a struggle like, oh my gosh, she's so mean. She's never liked me. That's why she's like kicked us out, blah, blah, blah. And I actually had to go and prove myself consistently, being like, okay, you know what? The initial packaging that we had in wasn't working. We've upgraded. Look at this. We've got our dividers in. Now the glass won't crack when we're sending it over to you. We've even adjusted our price points because of that. Give us another opportunity. Really selling yourself, and we're back with them. So I think it's and this is all while people are messaging my DM being like, oh my gosh, your TED Talk was amazing. You're so phenomenal. You're doing all these fantastic things. And behind the scenes, I'm like, So it's I think it's truly the Hustle Chronicles, and that is the hustle, isn't it? Really, is like figuring it out and consistently improving yourself. It is really cutthroat. It is really, you got to be tough. You've got to be consistent. Like I said, and the thing that I get to lean back on is that why, really resilient. However, and just going back to our initial point about like the TikTok culture and focusing on everybody starting up as an entrepreneur, I don't agree with that. I do think there are also amazing, fulfilling, rewarding jobs within the 9 to 5 space that we need people. We need our doctors. We need our nurses. We need our firefighters. We need all of you. So please don't all run away and become, you know what I mean? And there are also really cool, fulfilling jobs as well. So I always think, assess it. It's a you thing. You're the CEO of your life. And so move accordingly and assess yourself to see if you can, it's a step for you, essentially.
Yeah, 100%. I think the only thing I'd like to add to that is, as you sort of mentioned, is that like I had a interesting talk with my like team manager, and she was just saying like sometimes people think because like she knows that I do this the podcast, and she was just like it's like it's good that you do this, but she said like one thing that like people, she said especially like with this series is that like you said like a lot of people see like, oh, this person was 18, they like hustled, and at 21 they now like own a house, own a nice car, they've got like a like $1 million or whatever. And like you said, it's like this whole short form, fast content that people can just see and digest, and it's just like, but you also need to realize like ultimately, like you said, like it's not instant, and when it is, just as quickly as it comes in, it can quickly go out.
It does. What's the name of the guy that got arrested? The billionaire, the young guy that did the, what was it,
I know
the Bitcoin guy.
Yeah. But
what's the point of being like, what is the point of that? You see what I mean? Like, even, well, this is not like, it's not very nice, but we're seeing like what's going on there as well. Like, it's tough stuff. It is really tough to make a business work. The numbers, I think, what is it? How many % of businesses fail before 5 years? We're 5 years in December. Almost there. Fingers crossed. Just about. I hope so. So, but like the numbers are, I think it's about like 97% of businesses fail before 5 years. Ridiculous. So it's not easy. I spoke to a guy the other day. He's like, well, definitely by the time you hear this, he's got very in-depth, let's call, knowledge of the consumer industry. He set up 7 failed businesses and succeeded on his 8th. Wow. Yeah, so give me some insight into like, I hope that this isn't depressing though, because that's not what I want it to be. And then, like I always say to people as well, you start up a business, it fails, that's fine. Like it just makes you that much more cooler. What a story! Like that you get to say like, oh yeah, I did this, it didn't work, and I'm now doing this, and I can like draw on your insight. You have so much knowledge because you can tell us why it didn't work, and you can apply that and put that forward. So. We're freestyling. We're the CEOs of our lives. We're a hustle culture, hustle chronicles. We're figuring it out as we go along. But yeah,
I think that's a nice way to end it. I couldn't have said it better myself. But thank you so much, She, for coming onto the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. This is a phenomenal podcast. I think it's so cool that you put this together, and I cannot wait till you have like billions and billions of streams, and I get to be like, I was on the hustle.
Oh, thank you so much. I think big inspiration is Stephen Bartlett.
Yeah, I was going to say that, but I didn't want to.
Yeah, no, honestly, like even
he's phenomenal.
He so is. And actually, linking to what you were saying, he did if I can find the link to the LinkedIn post, I'll put it there. But he did a post on LinkedIn talking about Amazon, and like I think he said there were like 9 things that he like mentioned at a talk. He's saying like Amazon products. So I think Amazon actually were going to do like their own mobile phone. That failed. He mentioned like other stuff that Amazon were going to do.
Because they were a bookstore first, and they had loads of of course. Also, and that's also failure, but failure within the same bracket of like being Amazon. Do you see what I mean? Yeah. Whereas like, so it's honest. I don't know people that have just like started and kicked off, and it's just, and even when you think of all the big guys like Warren Buffett and all these. When they tell you their story, they all had things going on from like 12, and they were very different to what they're doing today. So. It's a journey. Be easy on yourself. Not too easy, because we are hustling and we want to see you at the top. We need you at the top. But take it easy. Understand that you are amazing because you're following this path. And we honor you. We respect you. And we cannot wait to see whatever it is that you're bringing forward to the world.
Like I said,
tune in to the Hustle Chronicles.
Couldn't say it better myself. Might need to use that for our new outro.
Yeah. Morning affirmations by Chi.
Exactly. I'm looking forward to the first one. But let us know. If our audience want to know more about you, if they want to know more about the business, the NGO, what is the best way for them to do it?
I think the easiest way is for you to go on my personal website. So my personal website is www.chiokafor.com. Super easy, and you can click on work on the tab that says work, and you can get to see our business, Kendake Honey, and also my NGO, The Walk with Women and Children. So I really look forward to connecting, hearing from all of you. And once again, Jeffrey, thank you so much for having me.
And thank you to our wonderful audience for coming back for another episode. If you like this episode, like, comment, subscribe. It's always appreciated. If you want to know when our next episodes are coming out for either this podcast or other podcasts within the sort of development field, then make sure you click the notification bell at the bottom of the video. Also, if you want to receive some perks or you want to support the podcast, please check out either our Patreon page or our YouTube channel membership. We've got some stuff planned for those channels, so please do keep an eye out. And very finally, if you're interested in looking at our other channels, as I mentioned, our entertainment podcasts have shifted from our main YouTube channel. So for any sci-fi and fantasy stuff, check out the Two Maesters. Gaming, check out Pick Up the Controller, and last but not least, check out Senseis of Anime if you're an anime fan. But yeah, we're going to close today's Chronicle chapter of the Hustle Chronicles, and we will be back next time when we discuss a new business with another entrepreneur. But before I also end it, as I mentioned before, and I realized for the previous episode, I didn't mention this. We will, of course, be bringing Chi back. I mean, like, she's happy. She can come back as much as she wants. But we're gonna also bring her back in a couple of months to this podcast because, as I mentioned, the whole plan of this is to see where businesses go.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah.
Wow, I love that.
So yeah,
that's unique. That's your why. What a why. That is unique
Thank you very
evidence.
much.
I love that.
Because we want to I've also said that I'm not saying this like about your business, but like with anyone, like we said, like we sort of mentioned here that sometimes people will try be entrepreneurs and they'll turn around and be like, actually, it wasn't for me. Like, I'm good. Or they'll come back and be like, actually, the business has popped off. It's really great. Or they'll be like, I'm actually at the same point, but actually I've learned a lot about myself and others. Or they might turn around and say, I've got a completely new business. Like, let's have another conversation.
Yeah.
So that's the whole point of this series.
That is so inspiring. That's a lot of motivation for me. So can we peg it at should we do 6 months?
We can do 6 months.
Okay,
6 months
so put it to the date. So I'm gonna come back here. Yeah, with some more, hopefully some more wins in my bag. I love that. Jeffrey, you're the best.
Well, thank you so much, and thank you to you guys.
Thank you guys.
Have a lovely day, and we'll see you soon.
Bye.